Good morning, Mets fans, and happy freezing cold Monday, Martin Luther King Day. Kids are off from school today, and of course, us adults aren't. We have to go to work, and it's been a week since I recorded a video, and I don't have a whole lot to talk about, and it's really why I haven't recorded anything in a week. I posted a blog on Friday, and I guess I'll follow up on some of that today. Just give you guys an update as to where I think the Mets are in their off season on this chilly Monday morning. I'm not usually a cold person. Usually warm all the time, but it's like 2 degrees outside, so I am bundled up and against the cold. And yes, that explains my get-up this morning. I look like the Nook of the North, but. Last night, I want to talk about 2 other games in another sport that were played, and it angered the shit out of me. In both games, the most valuable player was a coin, and that, in and of itself, is the problem with the National Football League. How the conference championships, both of them, can be decided on a coin toss is beyond me. I'm sorry, I just absolutely cannot understand how a game that is timed for every other period in its play, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, all timed. Doesn't matter who scores first or second, doesn't matter if it's a field goal or a touchdown, doesn't matter any of that crap. It's 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes, and that's it. And they play until the end of that 15 minutes, and a lot of times, because I hate the rules, they don't play the last 90 seconds. So whatever, I can deal with that. Somehow, however, in overtime, they decide that, no, it's not timed anymore. Now it's sudden death. So the first one to score a touchdown wins. And I can't understand how it's good for the game that one of the best young players it has to offer in Patrick Mahomes doesn't get a chance to touch the ball in overtime. How is that good for the game? So I hope everyone enjoys the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. The Patriots are there again. That's just like where they live. And the Rams are there only because the officiating crew in New Orleans missed one of the most blatant pass interference calls I've ever seen. But this is not about football. This is about baseball. And honestly, every time I watch football, I'm reminded why I love baseball so much. And I've said this before, I'll say it again till I'm blue in the face. Baseball is a fair game. Imagine in baseball, if in the top of the 10th inning, the visiting team came up to the plate, hit a home run, drove in 3 runs. And instead of letting the home team bat in the bottom of the 10th, they just said, nope, that's the game. It's all over. Doesn't happen in baseball. There's no taking a knee in baseball. You're winning by 12 runs, you still got to get 27 outs. That's why it's my favorite sport. And I know there are differing opinions about how exciting or boring it is. I get it for the people who think that football is this exciting sport and whatever, but it's also completely convoluted. It makes no sense. And there are so many things that make you scratch your head as you're watching it. Like, for instance, Tom Brady getting a roughing the passer call on a nearly identical non-call on Patrick Mahomes earlier in the same game by the same crew. And look, baseball is no different in that sometimes the umpire gets things wrong. It happens. But baseball's review to me, seems much cleaner than the NFL's review. And it's certainly younger. Baseball's review has only been around for a few years. NFL's been doing reviews for well over a decade, if not longer. I can't remember when that started, but I don't know. Every time I watch football, I'm reminded of how much I love and miss baseball. And dude, we're 22 days away from spring training starting, assuming a February 12th report date. 22 days from today. I can't wait. Now, what's happened in Metsville since the last time I talked? Not a whole lot. I missed Jed Lowry's press conference on Wednesday and Brody Van Wagenen posturing and saying we're the best team and come and get us. And I kind of like it. and I also kind of don't, because the last time the Mets made that proclamation, it was 2007, and we don't need to relive what happened that year. But I do like Brody's attitude. I like his swagger, and I hope that some of that rubs off on the team a little bit, and that they take that into the season with them, because that'll be fun to watch them have this chip on their shoulder sort of attitude that we are the best team, and you have to beat us to win this division. And I like that thought, that mantra. And I think that's a fairly common thing in baseball. I think everyone feels that way at the beginning of the season. But as the season goes on, I think the pretenders slip away, and the real thing sticks around. And we'll see what happens with the Mets on that this year. See if they get off to a hot start like they did last year, and see if they can maintain it. Other stuff that happened with the Mets. Wilmer Flores, no longer a Met. It was a sad day. Not tears of joy, just tears. Wilmer Flores signs with the Diamondbacks, and it's a good signing for both on both ends. I think Wilmer should thrive in the desert, but I think he'll get a good amount of playing time now that Paul Goldschmidt is no longer on the team. So good for Wilmer. I wish him the best of luck. I will always remember his ninth inning heroics throughout his Mets tenure. I think as time goes on, he will be remembered in the same vein as Rusty Staub, a guy who's just a beloved figure around the organization. And I mean, look, he's been with the Mets since he was 16 years old. That's amazing. So I'm not upset that he wasn't tendered a contract. I think it was the right move to move on from Wilmer. But it still stings a little. It still sucks a little. I do have one Wilmer Flores memory, and it's not the one that everyone thinks of. It was a random game in July of 2016. I went with my parents and my kids, and we went and see the Mets and the Marlins. And it was one of Jose Reyes' first games back with the Mets in 2016. And I know he hit a triple in the game, which was cool, but more importantly, this is a Wilmer Flores story. We were a little bit late getting to Citi Field. We're walking up to our section in left center field, just to the left of the apple. If you're looking at the apple, just to the left of that. So we're walking up, and the Mets are batting, and we hear a bunch of cheers. And we hear a bunch of cheers because Wilmer Flores hit a home run. And it went right in our section. And we're like, oh, that's awesome. Fast forward a couple of innings, Wilmer back up again, hits another home run, again, right in our section. In that same game, Giancarlo Stanton hit 2 monster home runs as well. Again, one of them being right in our section. So it was kind of cool just to see Wilmer hit 2 home runs in a game, a meaningless July game against the Marlins. But that's a fond memory for me because my kids were there and they saw the ball come near them, and it was cool. So I will miss Wilmer, and again, I wish him the best in Arizona. What's next for the Mets as the offseason continues? As I said, 22 days till spring training. I do think that there will be more additions made. We learned over the weekend that the Mets were in on Martin Perez, former Texas Ranger starting pitcher. So I do think the Mets are going to add another starting pitcher somewhere. But I don't think there's going to be big splashes made unless something unfolds with the Bryce Harper Manny Machado sweepstakes, where they sign where they expect to sign, and AJ Pollock is still sitting out there, perhaps without a market. Maybe he gets snatched up on a 1-year deal, comparable to the way Mike Moustakas did last season. We'll see what happens with that. But I don't think anything big is going to happen as far as signings go with the Mets throughout the rest of the offseason. I think this is the squad, for the most part, they will be reporting to Port St. Lucie with. And I, for one, am looking forward to it greatly. So I will be out of town later this week. Tomorrow is my last day in town, so I likely will not record another video, again, probably until next Monday. If news does break and there's something worth talking about and sharing, I'll do my best to jump on and record something from somewhere. I'm going to be in Minnesota, so it's not exactly the kind of place I want to be driving around in a car in. And I'll be in a rental car anyway, so you know how that goes. So anyhow, thanks for watching. I'll be back when I can, and if I can, and when I should, and whatever. Follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met, and as always, let's go Mets.